still traveling together through the Gospel of Mark, and I'm very ambitious today. We're going to try to go through a lot of material. So if you've not been with us, I'm just going to point you to the videos on YouTube to get caught up on where we've been. And I just want to jump in. We're going to pick up in chapter 8, and I'm going to read a couple of passages before we get to our main account, which is we're going to go through chapter 9 today. I'm going to pick up in 8:31. It says this: when he began to teach them, the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and the teachers of the law. He must be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. "You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." And so, just as we sit here today, we sit with a number of things in our mind, don't we? And I just want to ask you, how many of those things that you're dealing with in your mind today are concerns that are just purely human? Okay? And then how many concerns do you actually have that really, really matter, concerns of God? Okay, we're gonna read on, because can you imagine being the guy? I mean, this is Mark was Peter's kind of student. And so, when he's writing this down, he's like maybe looking twice at Peter when he's telling this story. It's like, dude, you don't look like you're doing real good here. He just called you Satan, right? Well, it gets better. It says, then he called to the crowd along with him, and the disciples said, "Whomever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whomever loses their life for me, for the gospel, will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them. And when he comes in the Father's glory with the holy angels, and say to them, truly I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the kingdom of God has come in power." And so we're going to jump into this mountaintop experience that Jesus has with three of his disciples. Remember, there's been exclusively these three guys that's kind of been drawn into kind of an inner circle with Jesus. We see that a few chapters ago when Jesus does this healing miracle. He only brings these three other guys in the room to kind of witness it. And the same is true here in the transfiguration of Jesus. It says, after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John with him and led them up to a high mountain where they were all alone. There he was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than any in the world could bleach them. And there appeared before them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Okay, so this word transfiguration, it's the same word that's used in Romans. You need to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. In Colossians, in Corinthians, and several other verses. But I think it's interesting because it's not actually what's happening here. It actually means, right, metamorphosis, right? So this something changes from one thing into something else, and so we automatically go back to the caterpillar, right? The caterpillar, comes along, makes itself a chrysalis, gets in the chrysalis, and while it's in the cocoon, and when it comes out as a butterfly, right? That's that word that's being used here. Jesus was not transformed into something that he wasn't already. He was already fully God. He is just lifting the veil okay? So these guys, like, check this out, okay? This is important. You hadn't been getting this. You hadn't been understanding this. Here it is. I am God. And here, I'm going to lift the veil a little bit for you. If there's any place in Jesus' life where we should use this word, metamorphosis, it would be when he came into the world, because he was not human before that, right? When he was born, that whole process, that would be more of a fitting picture of the transfiguration, right? Because he becomes something that he was, and he becomes fully human, and yet God at the same time. And so these two pillars of God's purpose and plan are with Jesus up on this mountain. When you think about these guys, Moses represented, the commands of God, and Elijah was the prophet of God, and when in Moses' ending, God was the only pallbearer for Moses, right? He puts his body where nobody's going to find it, right? Now for Elijah, what happens? Well, he doesn't die. He's one of these guys that rides off into the sky into this fiery chariot, right? And so these guys are back. And have you ever had just had a moment where it's like, I don't know, it's the sun setting and everything's perfect. The crickets are cricketing and everything's, and you're like, oh, this is so great. And then somebody does something, they say something, and they run the whole moment. Okay? Here it is. Peter says to Jesus, Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. I think that's the understatement of the day, right? It's good for us to be here. Let's put up 3 shelters. One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. How's that sound? And, as Mark is recording this, he wants to give some cushion, right, to Peter. So he puts in parentheses. He didn't know what to say. They were so frightened. If you don't know what to say, don't say anything. Right? Just shut your mouth, right? But here we see Peter's, just picking up where he left off on stuff. It says, and the cloud appeared and covered them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my son, whom I love. Listen to him." We don't have another recording like that. You have to go all the way back to Jesus' baptism. When we hear something like that happen, it says suddenly. Then they looked around and they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus. So these other 2 guys disappear, right? And so why shelters? Why did Peter why did he think this was a good idea? Right? And you could go back to tradition. You could go back and you could kind of think, okay, the Feast of Tabernacles, and they were at this feast, they were to build a little booth, a little tent to live in front of their house. Anybody ever camped at their house before, camp on their property? Yeah, it's like you wake up at 3 in the morning, and you're like, what am I doing out here? I mean, just, 30 feet away is like a nice bed, bathroom, and all the things I need. But for some reason, the adventure, it's like thinking that you're really doing something. And so this feast, this festival that they would do, they would build this tent in front of their house as a reminder of what it was like when you lived before you had the big house, right? Before you had anything. And it's a reminder that it's all from God. And while you wandered in the wilderness, you lived like this. Don't forget who brought you to the dance, right? Don't forget who gave you a seat at the table. Don't forget who has done all this for you, right? And so maybe it goes back to that, maybe. But, it seems like Peter's trying to give equality to all these guys, right? It's like, oh, yeah, Jesus, do you see how famous these guys are? Do you check this out? Let's hang out for a while. Let's not lose the experience. Right? And he's missing the boat all over again, right? Just like before, like all of us do. We missed the boat many times in what God is doing right in front of us. And so they come down and they realize that they are all just them and Jesus, right? It says that they were coming down the mountain. Jesus gave them orders not to tell anybody what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. And listen to this. They kept the matter to themselves, discussing what raised from the dead meant, right? Like, what is he talking about there? He keeps talking about he's going to die. And remember, it was out of everybody's mind, and even they couldn't even fathom. They could fathom a Messiah. They could fathom a conquering king from God. They could not fathom somebody that was going to come and be a servant and die. This is what he's done. This is what he's setting us up for. This is what he's going to explain. And so they kept the matters to themselves. It says, then they asked, why did the teacher of the law say to Elijah, come first? And Jesus replied, so to be sure, Elijah does come first and restores all things. Why then is it written that the Son of Man must suffer much and be rejected? But when I tell you, Elijah has come, and they have done to him everything they wished, just as it has been written. And so, John the Baptist was the guy that came to prepare the way for Jesus, right? And what did they do to him? Well, they cut his head off. They killed him, right? And so Jesus comes down off this mountaintop experience. If you've ever been on one of those, usually God brings you down into the valley, into the mess. This is exactly what happens. Since when they came to the other disciples, they had a large crowd around them, and the teachers of the law were arguing with him. So he walks right into this argument that's going on. And I'm going to paraphrase this next part just so we can get through what we need to get through today. And so he comes down. There's an argument going on. There's a father that's brought a son that's demon possessed, and the other 9 disciples are down here. They're like, dude, we can't get the demon out of the guy. We can't get the demon to come out of the kid. And so there's this big commotion going on. Jesus pulls the dad aside and says, hey, what's happening? He said, well, this demon, they can't get the demon out of my son. And so Jesus drives the demon out of the kid convulses, lays on the ground, says it looks like he's dead. And they're going, great, you killed him. Great, look. And Jesus, no, he's not dead. Just takes his hand, picks him up, he walks around. And then we get to this is that famous moment, right? Jesus makes that statement before he does that. It's like, oh, how long am I going to put up with this generation that just doesn't have any faith and doesn't believe? And that's when the man says, I believed, I want to believe, but help me with my unbelief, right? Maybe we've all screamed that before to God, help me with it. And as he raises this child from the dead, the disciples asked Jesus later, it's like, hey, how come we couldn't do that? And Jesus said, this kind can only come out by prayer. How many times me, as your pastor, goes to do something without praying first is embarrassing. and even good ministry stuff, even like stuff, it's like, yeah, this is what God's calling us to do. Check this out. I get in the middle of it and it's like, why is this not going? Why is this not working? Why is this not happening? And then of last resort, I decide, it'd be good to pray. How's that sound? I'll pray. And Jesus just says, listen, I'm here. You're going to have power that you cannot imagine that you can tap into. But I'm not going to let you do it alone. You're not going to do it without me. I've done plenty of stuff on my own. Plenty of it. And I wonder on the other side of it, after I really look at it, it's like, I wonder how much better that might have been if I took God with me. Have you ever been there? Am I the only one? And so we are powerless, right, without this connection to God. And he goes on. And he's left that place to pass to Galilee, and Jesus did not want anyone to know where they were because he was teaching his disciples, and he said to them, the Son of Man has come to be delivered into the hands of men. They will kill him, and after 3 days he will rise again. So this is intense. He's like over and over again. He's like, I'm dying. You need to pay attention. This is what's going to happen. In 3 days, I'm going to come out of the grave. It says, but they did not understand what he meant, and they were afraid to ask it. This describes my whole high school career. You ever not known something, right? And you needed to know it, but you were too afraid to ask the question? Yeah? This is my trig class, right? I was going to be good at math. Yeah? This is it. I remember taking the first test, and the teacher comes to me and is like, how'd you even get in here anyway? It's like, well, really, I was good at algebra. And really, it's like, yeah, you could have fooled me, right? And it's like, well, and this is like, I just finally I said, I don't understand anything that's going on here. It's like, why didn't you ask? I was scared, right? And that keeps us all at bay, doesn't it? Fear keeps us all at bay. And so it's like it's like, you ask. I'm not asking. And Peter definitely shouldn't have asked, right? He'd already been showing what he didn't know. So then they went to Capernaum, and then they saw, when he was in the house, he asked them, what are you arguing about on the road? But they kept quiet because on the way they were argued about who was the greatest. You ever had the goat? Who's the goat? Who's the greatest of all time, right? Who is it? And so they were having this argument. I wondered if it was over the three dudes that got special treatment. Maybe they were like, yeah, you guys wish you could be us, right? And you don't know, but Jesus begins to teach us what it is to serve, to be a servant. Teaches us what it is to be really great. So listen up. We're going to have to cruise through these. It says, anyone who wants to be first must be the very last. He sits them down. This is a sign of authority, and this is the first thing he says to them. So I want you to think for a moment, where can I intentionally be last? Okay. Now he's not talking about he's not talking to the person that already knows they're going to be last, right? There's certain things I know I'm going to be not good at. He's talking about where do I excel at? Where am I going to be first? Where I can intentionally go, hey, why don't you come on in front of me? Sometimes it's just so simple. I was at a thing last night with a bunch of believers, and it was like it was a fight to get out the door because everybody's like, no, you go first. No, you go first. No, you created this huge bottleneck. I was like, just get out the door. Right? I just want to leave, right? And it was like, no, but who, where, how's this work? What Jesus is going to tell us? He said, he takes this little child, he took a little child, and whom placed it among them, and taking the child in his arms, he said to them, whomever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me. Whomever welcomes me whoever does not welcome me, but the one who sent me. And so Jesus pulls this little kid aside. I kind of wonder whether this is Peter's kid or not. Peter was married. He probably had kids. They're in Capernaum. He's probably at Peter's house. He pulls this little kid up. He says, you want to know what it's like to be great? Check this out. He pulls this little kid up there. He says, this is what it's like to be great. And in that day and age, you have to understand that kids were not regarded as they are today. Although we have our struggles, right, with putting kids at proper perspective. But then it was the mortality rate was so high. And so it was like, let's not get super excited until they get to be a teenager. And then they got a teenager and like, why are we super excited, right? What's happening, right? And so, kids weren't regarded. It was kind of a really tight struggle back and forth. They cost a lot. Well, they cost a lot today, don't they? But, all of this, we think about what we've done with abortion through the years, right? And how we've disregarded life itself, right? And, so you look at it and you're like, well, but it was a different way of viewing it. So this was a little surprising to people. It's like, oh, okay. A child's to be quiet, to stay, to stay far away. And he says, welcome one of these. Do something for somebody who can't do anything for you in return. The kid can't. You have to do everything for them, especially when they're little, right? He said, so keep that in mind. We need to serve and pay attention to the next generation. This is why we've gone to great lengths here, to have vibrant options that back up what you do at home with your kids, with your family. Don't do it for you. Can't do it for you. But we can come alongside of you and know that you're not alone and say, yeah, this is, let me just remind you, you know this. The world, the culture has a plan for your kids. It does. It has a plan for your grandkids. It has a plan for the next generation. If we do not, it's scary. It's scary. It's scary. He's going to go on. It says, teach. They get nervous. John gets nervous. What happens when you get nervous? Change the subject. John tries to. John said, hey, we saw some driving out demons in your name, and we told them, stop, because he was not one of us. Like, what? Where did this come from, John? And Jesus said, don't stop him, Jesus said, for anyone who does miracles in my name can in the next moment say anything bad about me? From whoever is not against us is for us. This is the problem. This is the problem we get into when we get into competition with other churches. We're not in competition with other churches. Now the problem, I'll tell you what the problem is most churches are not discipling anybody. Nope. They are rearranging the seating order of other people who already follow Jesus. It's like, come over here. You know, yeah, our job is not to rearrange the seating order of people who already follow Jesus. Our job, listen to me very carefully, is to go save the lost. That's our job. Okay? So if you profess Christ, that's your job. Not to go, steal sheep from someplace else, right? And so, he said, what would it look like to win-win here? What would it look like to have a double win? Well, let's be about the Father's business. Let's be about our job, discipling, to obey them, to obey, teach them to obey all I've commanded them. He says, truly, I tell anyone who gives you a cup of water in my name because you belong to the Messiah will certainly not lose their reward. So, if anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone tied around their neck and to be thrown into the sea. This is the same thing, the same idea, how we are to look after the next generation. And here, it's not just about doing something heinous to a child, right? I think you could go to the extent here in this statement and say any young believer, anybody that's new in the faith, it's one thing to practice atheism, because it is a practice, it is a faith. It's another thing to write books about it, to be on the lecture circuit, driving people to a faithless type of living. I think there's a special place in hell for them. I do. And those that do anything against children, right, as well. And as I told you, the culture has a plan for your kids. It's to confuse them about whether they're a boy or a girl. It's to question every kind of authority that you can think of that is right. It is to take an 18-year-old who you've invested in for 18 years, send them off to university, and have a professor try to deconstruct their faith. There's a special place in hell for that. Okay? I don't see that lightly. Hell's a real place. It is a real place. Okay? It's sin. All sin drives us there, takes us there. And so when they were kind of rebuilding the city of Jerusalem, there's a very small sliver of time when the Israelite people, they sacrificed children. And at this place where they did that at, they got to this place and they said, this place is unredeemable. We're going to call it hell. And they turned it into a dump. And then when Jesus talked about hell, he talked about hell more than he did anything, really most anything else. Money's at the top too. And he said, when he would say this place, everybody had this vision of the dump. There was always a fire going there. There was always something to burn, stunk. Nobody wanted to be there. This place where God was not, was very real and very visible. Everybody knew it. And so Jesus gives the stark reality to anybody who leads somebody astray on purpose. And then he deals with sin in a very extreme way. I want you to pay attention to this. It says, if your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. It's better for you to enter life maimed than with two hands and go to hell, where the fire never goes out. And if your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off. It's better for you to enter crippled than to have 2 feet and be thrown into hell. And if your eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out. It is better for you to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than to have 2 and be thrown into hell. Now, he's not talking about self-mutilation here. That would be opposite of what we're told in Deuteronomy 14, right? He talks about things that really, your hand, things you do, your eye, things you see, feet, the places you will go, right? He says you have to get extreme with your sin. It's those moments when you realize, right? This sin controls me. It always has. And I get to talk with people all the time. What a blessing it is. And like when they stop lying and they really start talking about what's going on, it's like, okay, what's next? After you repent, turn away, what's next? It may be no more internet at your house because you can't not stop watching pornography. It may be no more alcohol in the house or around you at all, right? And you go to meetings. It may be that you need, it may be you're cursed with constant depression. Get off the internet, get off social media forever, right? It's extreme. It has to be. This is what Jesus offers us. It's because it's what he's done for you and me. He's gone to extreme lengths for you and me. I'm going to look at this picture real quickly. I stumbled upon this week. This is called the missionary journey. This is a famous picture that you have to Google it later to see how famous it is. I did when I first saw it. It's like, what's happening here? In the middle of this picture is a missionary. He's facing professional preachers, clergy, and you can kind of see the lackadaisical posture that they're having as he tries to explain the importance of serving the nations. He's showing them his scars from doing it. And there's people behind him that are joking around, having their own conversations. This is a picture to criticize where the church has landed. This is over 200 years ago that this was painted and critiqued like this. And it's this reminder to you and I, like, don't lose sight of the service that we're supposed to be involved in taking the gospel everywhere. And it's a picture within a picture. The picture on the wall behind it, it's deep. It's of a saint being martyred on a cross. No one's looking at that. Look at the only one facing it. It's a dude that's trying to pitch it. Hey, you need to wake up, he's saying. You need to get real with the sin that's in your life. And he's saying, why? Because Jesus went to this extreme for the whole world, for you and me. And let's that be our reminder, our mission, our reason for serving a world that is all going to hell. Right? That's the reality of it. And so maybe for you, it's just a reality check today. Maybe for you, it's you got to get extreme with stuff that's going on in your life, and you know it. Maybe for you, it's the first time that you've ever heard about Jesus. And we need to talk about that. You need to accept him in your life. Whatever that may look like, we're going to stand and we're going to sing this together.